This is the President McCormack Podcast with your host, Mark McCormack.
Ladies and gentlemen, my mother, Diana McCormack. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Mom.
You're welcome, son. It's nice to be here with you.
We were just talking. Who's your favorite child?
I knew I was going to get asked this question. So today it's you.
Oh, nice. She finally told me after 41 years.
Yeah.
What's your normal answer to that, Mom?
I don't have a favorite child, and that's actually a fact.
Yeah.
I've had people tell me, oh, you're going to love your first child more than your other. Not that you don't love them, but that first one is so special.
Yeah.
But mine were all special.
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade any of them.
I hope not.
Yeah. It's been quite a ride.
Has it? Well, do you remember what it was like becoming a mom for the first time?
I do, because we had been married almost 6 years. And, of course, you coming into the world, you were 17 days overdue. And when you're first time pregnant, you think, how is this ever going to come out of me? And will it ever come out of me? Type thing. But, yeah, I remember the day you were born. I mean, you don't want me to go into all that whole day, but as soon as they pulled you out with forceps, and I go, Mark, and you turned and flipped your eyes towards me, and you were just automatically in love, you know. That was the coolest thing ever. And of course they wanted me to hold you, but I was numb, and I thought I would be dropping you because they had you flat on your back. So I had your dad hold you first. And we spent the next 4 days in the hospital. And nice. You were a big one. And unless people actually have had a baby, they don't realize how big you really were.
How big was I?
You were 11'5", and you weighed, your weight was 11'5", and your length was 23 inches.
Oh, I was 23?
Yeah.
I've told people I was 21. It's hard to remember the details of everything.
No, not you. You were the cutest baby. You were like the size of a 3-month-old.
Yeah. And
you were so cute. Anyway, it was the best thing ever.
So were you nervous to have babies? Were you excited?
Yeah, I was excited to have them because of especially with the first experience that I had with the one that I lost. And so, yeah, I was really excited to have kids and never look back.
Yeah.
I loved it.
What's it like being a mom now?
It's really different because your kids are all grown up and they've got their spouses and their families. And so it's just different because you're not hands-on every day with your kids, running to this activity or that activity, or running them to school, picking them up from school, doing homework. You're not doing all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of different.
Did you like it better when we were little, or you like it better now?
I actually liked all of it. I mean, there's something that's nice about having little children and they haven't been exposed to the world. And you just have your routine that you do in your home with your kids, and everybody's happy and carefree, and, they think you're the greatest thing ever. And when they get older, it's just different. You don't see them as often. But when you do, it's great, because I have grandkids, and they're like the icing on the cake. And that's something that Al Switzler told me once. He says, kids are just a means for those grandkids, because they're the icing on the cake. And
yeah.
And they are. They're the best. All my little grandkids are adorable.
How many grandkids do you have now?
I have 7. They range from 3 to 13, And I have number 8 coming in the spring.
Nice.
So really excited for that.
The little boy, right?
Yep.
Good. So it's my little sister, Jalen. We'll be having probably maybe the final baby. What do you think?
I never know. Everybody's always asking me, are you going to get any more grandkids? And I'm like, I'm just glad that all my children at least have one.
Yeah.
And they can have kids whenever they want. It's not up to me.
Yeah. Yeah, having kids it's interesting. Our family dynamic's interesting. Who's your favorite grandkid?
I don't have a favorite.
Really?
Every one of them they're so unique, and they're all crazy about me.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about my kids for a minute.
Okay.
Describe your relationship with Brea.
Well, Brea, who's my oldest, who's 13 years old now, she is the sweetest gal, and she's kind-hearted. She doesn't care about fashion. She just lets her mom pick her clothes, so she always looks great. But she's not really worldly at all, where a lot of teenagers kind of get a little attitude. Not Brea. She's as sweet as they come. And she's quiet. She's just adorable.
Yeah.
She's always just been somebody you want to be with. She's really talented. She does a lot of things. She has a lot of experiences that she's involved in, and it's the best.
Yeah. What do you guys talk about when it's just you and Brea when they stay over at your house?
Well, her brother and sister are always there, so they're always making movies, and she's got her brother and her sister both really involved in the movie making, and her Chittister cousins are involved a lot in it, and we talk about that. She loves imaginary things. She's a real good student, and it's just general conversation that we have.
Yeah. She share anything about her world with you?
She doesn't really come out and say things like, she doesn't divulge a lot of information. Like, she didn't tell me that the other night she was going to go on a date with you. It's just like, oh, another fun time with my dad. I wouldn't have known about it if it wasn't for Michelle telling me that. But she loves fantasy things. She's got a great imagination. And so there's a lot of that in our conversations. And, they like to catch me in funny moments. And I'm like, kids, don't film me. But I don't know. She's just a sweetheart.
Yeah. Where do you see her life going?
Well, I think the sky's the limit with her. I know that she is really into the filming, making these movies, and she actually has been since she was about a 2-year-old. Because my iPad had a program on it with Disney that you could make little videos up, and I've still got them, the couple that she made on my iPad. And it was funny because she would always tell her younger brother, who's a couple years younger than her, what to say. No, Nixon, you need to say this. And so he'd say that, He adored her, and she was really cute with him. But I think that girl could do anything she wanted to do. She's laid back and that, but she's willing to try anything. I had a day this past year where I thought, well, I'm going to teach her how to sew a pair of pajama bottoms. And so brought her down to my house, and I had fabric, and I thought, no, I'll let her pick out fabric that she wants. So I took her to the fabric store, and I kind of like that. She's just not she's not greedy or pushy or entitled. She's just not like that. She's just a sweet girl. And so I took her home and I had her do the whole thing. And I don't know, Grandma, if I can. I said, you can do it, Brea. This is how you lay a pattern out. This is, I just told her all the steps of basic sewing. And then we went into my sewing room where she used the serger. Oh, I don't know about this, Grandma. I says, you can do it. Just do it slow. And she made them. And they're an A+. She did a beautiful job on them. So it was a fun day with her. So it made my 5-year-old, little Holland, will you teach me how to sew, Grandma? I says, yeah, when you're 12. So anyway.
Yeah, you have a steady hand. So what about your relationship with Nixon?
Nixon is just this happy, energetic little 10-year-old. He adores you. He, in fact, all your kids do. They love you dearly. And it was funny when he was over the other night. They couldn't go into my sewing room because I had Christmas presents in there for them, actually. And so he came down and knocked on the door because I was finishing up something. And I come out and he goes, Grandma, my dad wants me to ask you what advice you would give me. I'm like, oh, okay. And so I give him this advice, and he said, thank you, Grandma. And he goes buzzing back up the stairs. But he's just an agreeable young man. He's got a good heart. He's very smart, and he's aware of everybody's behavior. He knows if you're being honest or if you're not. I can't see him ever being unkind to somebody. He's just a good kid, and he's a pleaser, I would put him down as. Where with his schoolwork, he does his schoolwork, and he does his best, and I check it over, and I'm like, let's look at this one. Okay. He's just the pleasant little soul.
Yeah.
He just is. He loves his family. He doesn't like to go on long drives. He told me the other day that I said, did your mom and dad fly down to Vegas? And he says, oh, they always fly unless we're with them and then they drive. And I'm like, oh, really? I says, but you do know that take 5 people on a plane, it costs a lot of money. Yeah, he knew that. But he's a little talkative guy. He'll sit and tell me all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
He's just a great young man.
He is. What's the best way for you guys to interact with each other?
What, in talking to each other?
Yeah, like when he's around. Do you guys talk? Do you guys play? Do you cook?
We do all that. I mean, he helped me the other day. In fact, it was funny. I've got these really sharp knives, and I said, Nixon, would you like to, because I did tacos, and I said, would you like to cut our lettuce? And so I put a head of lettuce down in front of him on the cutting board, and he got the knife out of the drawer, and of course I'm like, has he ever used this knife? I don't want any fingers lost. Anyway, he chopped that lettuce right in half without me telling him anything. And I says, oh, here, Nix, let's not chop the whole thing. Let's turn that over. And he just went to town on that. He was so cute. I said, you want to cut tomatoes? Yeah. Of course, none of your kids like tomatoes. They take after their Uncle Kevin. And anyway, so he cut them up, and then he did some cilantro, and he just was mincing it, and it was fun having them all. I had Brea doing the hamburger, chopping it down, and he's giving her instructions on how to use that thing. Just do this, Brea. And she just laid back doing her thing. Anyway, it was fun.
Yeah.
So, but we play games. Of course, in the summertime, they love to swim, and they're all really good swimmers, which is really nice for me. And during the wintertime, they like to get in the hot tub, and they don't just sit there. they're diving in the bottom of the hot tub, and they're funny, especially little Harper. And of course Nixon too, but anyway, they're cute kids.
Yeah.
They're up for anything.
Yeah. What about Harper?
Harper's a little sweetheart. She cuddles into you. They know the routine when they come to my house. They each pick a bedroom that they want to sleep in. They have their favorites, which is kind of funny. Mm-hmm. And, but she's just a sweetheart. And her and Holland play together, and they're just these two cute little girls that have more fun, and they squeal and scream. And when those two are together, you know they're in your house.
Yeah.
They're fun, but Harper's she's really a kind little girl. And I don't think your three kids would be happy if they weren't together. They're just like a little team.
Yeah.
And but she's got high energy. She likes to do handstands and do cartwheels in my living room, and she's just full of energy. She's just a cute little girl, and she notices everything too. But and they all play the piano. They all love the piano. And anyway, and that's fun for me as a grandma to see that these kids are developing skills with their swimming, their piano, their schooling. She's a good little reader. Her and I sat and read together when you guys were gone to Iceland. And she's a good little reader. She's picking it up like crazy, I think.
Yeah.
But you could give her anything. You could give her any book. And if she looked at a word she didn't know, and if more advanced books, obviously, there would be a lot of that. She sounds it all out to get the word. She doesn't shy away from moving forward in her life and learning things.
Yeah.
She loves everything.
Yeah, they're very good students.
Yep.
So what was it like raising kids in the 80s and 90s versus now?
Well, I think there's more distractions in the world now. There were then compared to when I grew up. And maybe that has to do with the economics, for some of the opportunities. Like, for instance, I never flew in an airplane till I was 19. That wasn't something that my family did. And I knew my dad had gone on some trips because I was raised partly in California. So my dad would fly up and be with his parents because they had some health issues and stuff like that. But the kids nowadays, I think with social media, that has really changed the dynamics of how these kids are being raised.
In what way?
Well, they have phones, but with your kids, I don't know what Nixon's doing because he doesn't actually have a number. He says his number's your number.
Neither of them have a number. They only have an email.
Oh, well, for some reason, I can send things to Brea. I can send things to Nixon too, but he's not so into the phone the same way because Brea likes to create movies.
Yeah. That's
her thing on her phone. She's not into other things, but I don't know. I just think there's so many worldly distractions now that are in your face because of social media. And like when I was a kid, or even when you guys were kids, but more when I was a kid, we watched cartoons Saturday morning. You knew that Saturday morning, they probably had an hour worth of cartoons. And that was a big thing in the morning. You'd all go out and watch that. Well, now they can watch whatever they want 24/7. And there's so much available on TV, the stations and all that kind of stuff. Plus you can do YouTube, which isn't, you've got to monitor everything your kids do. Not that you weren't monitoring it when I was raising kids, but it was different. my kids did a lot more outdoor kind of things, where the kids nowadays can sit on their couch all day long and just look at a phone or look at an iPad.
Yeah, it seems like when I was growing up, we would just leave the house at 9 o'clock in the morning and come back when it was dark.
No, that was your dad's upbringing in England. I never told my kids, get out of the house and don't come back till dinner. I was not that mom.
No, I didn't think you said that to us. I think it's just kind of what we did.
Well, in the summertime, I used to take you on what we called our field trips. And I loved the summer because my kids were there. And we would go to Kennecott Copper or a museum or the zoo, or we just did the whole summer. We did that. And then I had some neighbor kids that could be at my house at 7:30 in the morning. So I made kind of a rule that they couldn't come over to play until after lunch. And because I had things that we did. We had work that we always did. I had that little work chart that, you guys would stand on a chair and see what you had to do that day. And I mean, it was like brush your teeth, pick up your toys or whatever. It was that simple kind of thing for kids. But I was pretty structured with the things that I did raising my kids. And I loved being with them. I was never that mom that go play at the neighbors. The neighbor kids were usually at my house. But anyway, but I think you have to really monitor, and I think you guys are good about monitoring the time that your kids can be on TV.
Grab it. My mom's a popular lady.
Oh.
Just mute it on the side. There you go.
There. Yeah, getting phone calls already today.
Who was it?
One of my friends.
Good. It's also my mom's birthday today.
Yeah, that's why I'm a little bit popular.
Super popular today. Mom, what number is it?
Oh, I hate to even give the number.
It's fun, though.
But I am 69 years old, 12/22/22.
Nice.
My birthday today.
Yeah. Yep.
They're slow. Your years are slow when you're younger. But you hit a point, and I'm not sure what the point is, because once you have kids, you're really busy all the time. It's like a 24/7 job.
Yeah.
But as you get older, I'm pretty sure these birthdays come about every 6 months. It seems like it.
Yeah. Now, your birthday's 3 days before Christmas.
Yep.
Have you liked that or hated that your whole life?
I've liked it. My grandfather, my mom's dad, which is my Grandpa Van, his birthday's tomorrow. Mm. And so I guess all of his years growing up, he always got gypped. But it was a different time, too. You're talking about before the Depression and stuff like that. And so what he got for Christmas counted for his birthday, and he always felt gypped. And I have an aunt who's the 26th, and she would give me a birthday card every year because she felt gypped because her birthday was the day after Christmas.
Yeah.
But my older brother, who's just 13 months older than me, he was always jealous that I got to have presents 3 days before Christmas, which is kind of funny because, he has a November birthday. It's not like he didn't just have a party. Yeah. But so my mom always made my birthday special, and my family always did. I didn't, they never said, go pick a present under the tree and that can be your birthday present. They never did that.
Yeah.
So it was always special to me, and so we'd celebrate my birthday, then the next day we'd go and celebrate my grandpa's birthday, then the next day was Christmas Eve, which we always spent when we lived up here in Utah with my mom's side of the family, which was really fun, and then Christmas Day. So it was always fun for me.
Yeah. So growing up, did you think your family was closer growing up as a kid or closer now?
I think that that when you get married, there's different times in your life. When you first get married, then you start having children. And of course, my younger sister had a child before I did because of the health issues that I was having with that, at the beginning. And then my brother moved away, and my younger brother, he moved away, but I'm really close to all three of my siblings. My older brother, as you well know, passed away last year. And it's just a different thing. I'm 5 years older than my sister, who's just younger than me. And so growing up, 5 years is a big difference. So when I'm a senior in high school, she's a seventh grader type thing. Mm-hmm. Or when I'm sixth grade, she's kindergartner, first grade, something like that. But as we got older and were married, then you're kind of on a different playing ground kind of thing. And, I love my siblings. And my brother's living in Wisconsin, so him and I talk on the phone, and his son got married this past summer. And so I was able to fly down to Texas and go to his wedding. And, we've always supported each other. My brother flies back and forth for the weddings of my kids and stuff like that. So, and he loves my family. He thinks my kids are the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I think I have a good relationship.
Yeah. What was it like growing up in Utah and California? What'd you like about it?
Well, I don't know if people know where Granger is, but that's where I grew up when I lived. I lived in Murray for 1 year when I was fifth grade, and then we moved back down to California. And it was always nice. I mean, it was just typical. You went to school, with all your neighbors and met a lot of people as you went into the bigger schools. But I don't know. I liked it. I've got so many friends from my life. And I ran into one a couple of weeks ago. It was a gal that I taught in young women's. And she thought it was the best thing in the world to see me. And I'm like, oh, pretty cool. And she's naming all this stuff about me and my kids when they were little and stuff like that. But people do. You kind of have a moment in time where you have met different people. And they're very meaningful in your life. They're people that you love forever. And you may not see them for 10 years or 20 years, but when you do, it's awesome.
What's some of the most defining moments in your character from your childhood?
I don't know. I don't know that I could.
Was moving around a lot hard, or was that easy? Did it make you resilient?
Well, I didn't mind moving around. And I never heard my siblings ever complain about it. But my dad was an iron worker. And so he would go where the work was, I guess. And there were great opportunities. He was a general foreman down in California. And so I never minded that. I mean, you're probably always a little apprehensive about the first day of school and how you're going to fit in and that kind of thing. But I was always surrounded with good people. And I mean, obviously, there were different dynamics because there's so many LDS people in Utah. Plus, I was around both my sets of grandparents here and a ton of cousins, that kind of thing, where I didn't have that in California. But I was always surrounded by good people. Yeah. Regardless, I've got dear friends that are not LDS that are dear to my heart. So...
How did being LDS as a child affect you the rest of your life?
Well, I have a very strong testimony of the church. And, I was always active in the church. I'm actually a 6th generation member of the church. And my family history goes right back to the restoration of the gospel. And it was just normal. I never felt forced to go to church. I never, and I don't know, I was always a part of it. I learned some skills when I was in primary, for instance. I think when you were about 10 years old, you did a cross stitch, which I still have. And then the next year we learned how to knit. And we knit a pair of slippers for ourselves. And the next year I learned how to crochet around a doily, around a hanky. And so that was probably where I really got into what I've done all my life with all the art and different things that I've done. So I loved it. I've got lifetime friendships from people that I went to church with.
Do you think your creativity comes from being grown up LDS?
No.
It was just...
I've never thought of it that way anyway. I just think that you learn so many things. Like they used to have bazaars that the Relief Society women would do every year. They haven't done them for decades, but excuse me. So as a kid, I was always seeing all this handmade stuff that people did, and I guess it really sparked something in me.
Yeah.
But, throughout my life, I can sew anything. I made my own wedding dress. I've made tailored coats. I've made men's shirts. I've made a suit. I've done all these kind of things, but I think I have a passion for that because I've been around plenty of people that had to do all the sewing in school that I had to do, and they hate it. It's stressful to them. Even doing a simple A-line skirt is stressful to them, and it isn't to me.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'd do with myself if I wasn't making quilts all the time.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done for a lot of years, where they're more pieced or hand appliqued or paper pieced or whatever I'm doing.
Yeah, because a lot of your interaction socially for a long time has been with quilting, right?
Yeah, I go to a retreat up at the Zermatt, February, March, in that time frame, and there's 140 women there, and we're all quilters. And it's a great energy because we all have a passion and a love for quilting. I don't think there's anybody there. In fact, I know there isn't anybody there that are not pretty skilled at quilting.
Oh.
And there's different levels of quilting, obviously. But we can all respect each other for whatever level we're at.
Yeah.
And there's classes that you can take, but just the friendships that you have there are really important.
What level of quilter are you, Mom?
I'm pretty advanced. And I don't mean that to be, I've been doing it for decades, so why wouldn't I be?
And I'm just finding it interesting if you'll say you're an expert level or not.
Yeah, I'm pretty skilled at quilting.
Yeah. Top 1%?
I don't know. I've never looked at it that way. But you can tell by the type of quilts that people make where they are in their journey of quilting.
Yeah.
And
what's the most famous quilt you've ever made?
Well, the one that I personally was that hand appliqued and pieced. It's called Afternoon Delight, and I don't know why I can't think of who designed it. The lady's actually passed away. But that's a quilt that I haven't ever seen anybody else make it, except for one in a store. But there's like 40 applique pieces in it, more to the type that you would find in a Baltimore album, kind of detail, small little things. And then the blocks in between all that are really teeny tiny 9-patch, and I didn't do them some quick method, because there's quick methods in doing that where all your 9 patches are the same, and you can do rows and then you can cut them and turn them and sew them together. I did them all individual pieces of fabric, and that was actually the part that drove me kind of crazy, was making those teeny tiny little 9 patches. But it's a beautiful quilt, and I wouldn't sell it.
Where is it?
It's in my cabinet outside my sewing room.
Okay.
It's there. But I've done wool applique quilts. That wool is the easiest applique you could even dream of doing.
Well, didn't you do a quilt that ended up with the Prince of Monaco?
Yeah. When they had the Olympics here in Utah, they had a soft quilt salute to all the countries. And the country that I got was Monaco. So it was, it wasn't Prince Rainier. Is it Albert? Prince Albert? I think he was the one who came, his son anyway, who's ruling it now, that came to Utah representing the Olympics. And he got the one that I did. But they were probably, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was like a 20 by 20 block. Mm-hmm. And you could create anything you wanted. They wanted them hand quilted. And yeah, he's the one that got mine.
Nice.
So, and that was fun.
Did you ever receive anything because of that?
No. He never responded. Yeah. But.
When did quilting become a passion for you?
Well, when I was a child, my mom always had a quilt set up on her quilt frames in our living room. But at that time, they were mostly tying quilts. They'd kind of gotten away from hand piecing them together, because they always had a sewing machine. I don't know why they were doing this, but they were hand sewing their blocks together. Like the Dear Jane quilt that I'm still working on. The original one, which I've seen in Bennington, Vermont, that one was actually made by Jane A. Stickle, and she did the whole thing by hand. And so it's very imperfect kind of thing, where with machines you can make it more perfect than what she did, but hers was gorgeous. I mean, somebody was so impressed that they made up this whole pattern, and for more than 10 years, people have been making her quilt. And so it was pretty cool that way. But yeah, when that one's done, that's going to be a big deal one too. But I always have, I hate to even say, because I wouldn't be exact, but I probably always have at least 8 or 10 quilts started that have been going. And this year for Christmas, I've made all of my grandkids, even number 8, who's coming in the spring, I've made them all a quilt that I'm giving them for Christmas.
Oh, cool. How big?
The girls are all getting bed-size quilts, and my 2 grandsons are getting, Nixon's actually has turned out to be quite big, but not for his bed, because, he has a huge bed.
Yeah.
But the 2 boys have Minky on them, plus the baby. I put Minky on the back of theirs. And I know the girls they're going to wish they had Minky, but you don't put Minky on bed-size quilts. At least I don't. It's a mess to deal with that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I have a lot of beautiful quilts that
You do? You quilt almost every day?
All the time. And I just got a brand new sewing machine for my birthday.
Oh, another one.
Yeah, and it's amazing. Because my last one was a Viking designer one, which I had for 22 years, and the computer went out on it, and Viking doesn't make parts for it anymore. In fact, I'm supposed to pick it up from the place today. I'll have to remember that. But so your dad took me out looking at machines, and this guy sold me on a fancy Bernina.
Yeah.
That's actually a special edition of a designer named Kay Fawcett, which is a man. He's about 82 years old, and he makes this crazy, wild zinger type fabric. Anyway.
Cool.
So I got that. So yeah, I sew a lot, because now that I'm not raising kids and going all the time, of course I sewed when I had kids.
Yeah.
I've just always sewn.
What's your favorite part of sewing? Like, is it relaxing? What do you like about it?
Probably the creativity of it. And I definitely have certain styles of quilts that impress me. And like the lady that does the long arm quilting for me, she told me once, she says, I can always tell if it's your quilt. And I'm like, oh, okay. But anyway, I do. I have certain ones I like.
So what makes you happiest in your life, Mom?
My kids and my grandkids.
Why is that?
Because I love them. They bring joy and happiness to my life.
Is it just being around them, or what part brings you joy?
Well, it's really fun when you're around them all, because they're, you get to hear all the things that they're involved in, and get to go to their football games and their recitals and their piano recitals. All the things that I get included in are really fun. Yeah. And I love it. And I love spending time with my kids. So, and I like how all my kids have turned out.
Yeah.
They're all hardworking, good people, and they love life. Yeah. They've all made great homes and families. They're all married to great people who I adore and love, and the dynamics of it all is everything to me.
Yeah. What's been hard about being a mom?
I don't know that there's one thing that's hard about it. It's hard when you see your kids struggle, as you're raising your children, and one of them got bullied at school or didn't, felt like they didn't do as good as they could have or something like that. It's hard to see that. Or when they're rejected by somebody, or that's hard.
Yeah.
Because you want to take that away from your kids, but you can't. I mean, that's life. You have to go through experiences to learn and to develop who you are. So that's the only thing I can think of, because I loved raising my kids.
Yeah.
They were all good people. They were all respectful. We didn't have a home where I had 3 sons beating up on each other like some people tell me. And how do you stop that? I'm like, really? Who's in charge of your house? You kids, and now as adults, you're all real good with each other. You care about each other. You are very generous with each other. And so I don't know. I really just see the good.
Yeah.
So
what was, so having me as a teenager, what was I like?
You were always a good kid. I remember one time you said to me, let me think how you posed it. You wanted to be an airline pilot. And you said to me, Mom, would it be okay if I become an airline pilot when I'm older? And I thought that was cute that you were asking me that. I said, son, you can be anything you want to be. If you want to be a pilot, you'd be the best pilot. I think people should be what they want to be.
Yeah.
So.
What have I done that's made you most proud?
Oh man, Mark, that's a long list.
What's the first thing that pops in your head?
Well, the first thing, I can remember you as an 8-year-old when you turn 8, you got to be in Cub Scouts. And so we went out and we bought you all your uniform, your shirt, hat, the book, the little Cub Scout thing. And I remember you sitting down and you wouldn't put that book down until you'd read every word in that book. And I remember I was really impressed with that. But you were more like Brea. You weren't, in your face out there bouncing off the walls. You weren't like that. But you did everything. You earned every badge, every award. And then you went on to, the Pinewood Derbies that you would make those cars with your dad and do all that. I don't know. It was just such great interaction with other people, other children doing the same thing. But you were always proud of the kind of Cub Scout you were. And then when you became a Scout, all the camps every year and the leadership camps that you were involved in. And, you were just such an impressive person. You would set a goal and you would achieve it. You knock things out. But you were always a pleaser, too. You were always very respectful of me. You still are. You were just a good person. And you helped other people to achieve and accomplish things. I mean, it's a part of your nature. And when I see you now and what you've accomplished and what you do accomplish, and I probably don't even know all of it, you're well loved by people. And you're kind. You know what needs to be done, you make it happen, and you go for it. And I like the fact of your honesty. But I've always been proud. You've always been accomplished in your life at whatever was presented to you. You made the most out of it and totally completed it. I mean, you're 3 palms on an Eagle Scout, aren't you?
I'm 9.
You're 9. I just remember that they had 3 little badges. But anyway, you were just awesome. You're an amazing person, son.
Thanks, Mom. So I brought you on here to hype me up.
Yep.
So I'm 41 now. I've got 3 kids. Married. Been married forever. Almost 19 years. When I was 20, let's just say when I was 18 years old, where did you think my life would end up?
I'm trying to think what you were. I remember that you were offered a scholarship at BYU in their, what field was that, would you call it?
Technology.
The technology field. And so they took you down to BYU and, tried to show you how wonderful everything was. But you had learned some skill in that at Lone Peak High School. And they had the equipment there that was at least as advanced as what BYU had. And they were impressed with what you were doing there at high school. So anyway, they had you over there. And you came home to me and you said, Mom, I don't want to do that. And I'm thinking, oh, that would be nice if they paid your education. And you said, well, I don't want to be a school teacher. If they want me to be a school teacher and teach this, you said, I don't want to do that for my living. Of course, we didn't really know the game of college where you may go in with one idea, but you are exposed to many ideas of what you could do in your life, and you could, do whatever you wanted to do. So I don't know. I was always impressed with you. But I didn't really think that you guys would necessarily work in the company business. I didn't look at it that way. But where you started your employment, which you joke about with people because you were 8 or 9 years old?
Yeah.
That's because I was hauling you down to the building to clean it. And then Dad started having you sort bolts or do some crazy thing like that. But you learned the value of work. So you were never lazy. None of my kids are lazy. They all are hard workers and, try and better their lives and better their families and stuff like that. So
why do you think we're all hard workers?
I think, I don't know. Well, in our home, you had responsibility. And I think it starts there because you knew there were expectations, making your bed, just simple, basic things that, at least they're basic to me, that you do in a home. And I didn't just do everything for everybody. It was always a learning thing. And it was, age appropriate, what was good at that time. And then, of course, the opportunity of going down with me, because you guys were always with me. I didn't just leave you at home while I went and did things. You were there. And so you had an opportunity there with cards, the color cards and stuff like that. Did you do those?
Yeah.
Because I know that the boys did them. But you guys knew the value of it. Well, even with you, I remember you wanted this pair of jeans. Was it Junko? Junko jeans or some crazy pair of jeans. They were like $65. And I thought, you've got to be kidding me. And, I got to have these, Mom. And I said, okay, well, you can pay for some of it. Because I thought if he pays for some of it, he's going to realize the value of it and it wasn't just given to you. Because, obviously, we bought all your school clothes and everything, all your necessities of life and stuff like that. But as you got older and you saw things that were available, like, not Pac-Man, I think that was the first one you guys got. I can't really remember. What would be the next one you got of those games? We've owned them all. I've bought them all.
On Nintendo?
Yeah, Nintendo and stuff like that.
Oh, I don't know. Zelda, Contra.
Yeah, we just had so many. That's one thing I'm not buying again is any of that kind of stuff. Even though it'd be fun to play it at my house. No. But anyway, I don't know. And then, the opportunity that you got because Dad and I own the ADP, Lemco, is that at 14, you guys got to work there in the summer, where normally you have to be 18 to work in a factory. But because you were our children, you got to do it. So for the summer, I don't think you guys worked the whole summer, but you at least worked until football season started. And you learned a lot of valuable things by being able to do that, where a lot of kids don't get that opportunity.
Yeah.
And that was good.
What were the best lessons our father taught us?
What was the best lesson?
What were the best lessons that our father taught us?
That Dad taught you?
Like when you see your kids, like what influence do you see came from our dad?
Oh, I think that you're highly influenced by your dad because, for one thing, he's totally devoted to you kids. He loves you dearly, would do anything for you, wishes you would let him do more because, he's retired now and, that's a whole different ball game of being retired. But I think your dad taught you, he was always an example of church. He was, and with work. He expected you guys to do the best job, to be the best people out there. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that. He was a good example. He's a hard worker. He always has been.
What example of church did he give us? Just going every week?
Going to church, supporting you in the different things that were out there. He was always in a bishopric or, he rarely sat with us because he was always in a position like that type thing. I remember one time we were in that north building in Highland, and I must have just had you 3 little boys. You were a 6-year-old. And I had gone out into the foyer with probably Kevin, because he was the youngest, so I don't know why. Anyway, I went out there for a minute, and all of a sudden it was on fast and testimony meeting, and all of a sudden I'm hearing your voice, and you had gone up in front of the church to bear your testimony. You didn't care if your mom was there or not. If I walked up there with you, I was like, geez, I've missed, I heard it from the foyer type thing. But your dad, he was totally devoted to your parents. And I think you've learned lessons from that.
He was devoted to his parents?
He was totally devoted to his parents. And, he supported them for 35 years. And, but he was always there for him. And I think that's a good example for you kids, that you saw what a devoted son he was to his parents. He's always been really devoted to his siblings.
What do you think the lesson in that is?
I think it's important that you see that your father loved his parents, and he wanted the best for his parents. He wanted to give them more than what they had. And I think there's a lot of disconnect with people and their parents. They don't care if they're ever around him or whatnot, but you didn't see that with your dad. He was always really good to his mom and dad.
He was, but his tale's a little bit of a cautionary tale, wouldn't you say?
No, I think it was a good example that your dad was so good to his parents.
What about the relationship with his siblings?
With his siblings? Well, the only thing I know about that is stories your dad's told me. And I think at least, I don't know how many times, but they would go camping as a family, as kids.
I mean more like nowadays, the last 10 years.
Nowadays? Well, he has two brothers that live in England, and the one that's just older than him, he is texting him and talking to him on the phone all the time.
Now, right?
Now. And he has for the last couple of years anyway.
And before that, he was silent on
him. Well, not by his choice. It was more his brother and some of the issues he was having.
Yeah. His brother.
But his wife passed away, who I just adored her. Her and I were good friends. But she died, 15 or more years ago. It's been a long time, and he's been single since then. And he did live here in Utah and California for quite a few years, and then he's moved back to England after, he's been back there for quite a few years. And he also speaks with his older brother, but not as much. His oldest brother, I should say. But, he stays in contact with them all the time. Mm-hmm. And then he's got, let me think about this, 2 nieces, and he actually has 2 nephews that live over in England too. And Neil, the oldest, he's not the oldest grandchild, he's the second grandchild. What a great person Neil is. I've known him since he was a 2-year-old. And I don't even know how old he is now. He's quite a bit older than you are.
Yeah.
But he's a good family man. He's a good person, but he's never really lived in Utah. He immigrated here with his parents, but he never stayed living here because he was going to college and stuff at that time, and married and has a family over there. But, your dad loves his family. He calls his sister, who lives locally. He'll call her every now and again and stuff, and they,
So Dad had a little brother die.
Yeah.
Of alcoholism. How would you describe their relationship?
Oh, your dad was always a big brother to him. He was always looking after him and trying to help him in his life. He worked for the company for years. And he had some issues in his life so your dad gave him a job. And He was the youngest sibling in the family, but he never got married. We found out after he had passed away, a couple of years after he passed away, that he had a daughter that he never even knew about. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you can always look back at somebody's life and say, well, he might have been different if he had known he had this daughter who's actually Brett's age. But, you know, life is what it is.
Yeah.
You know, you make your choices. Wouldn't
you consider Dad and Shane, his little brother, like best friends?
No, I wouldn't consider them best friends. They did a lot of stuff together, but I wouldn't look at your dad's siblings as his best friends.
Not as siblings, for sure.
Just looking at him.
I'm talking just Shane.
Just him. I mean, I've known him since he was 11. Mm-hmm. And he was a nice kid. I remember the first Christmas I'm dating your dad, and he came down. Ross, he took me up to his house, his parents' house in North Salt Lake, and Shane had bought me a gift at 11 years old. So this is pretty much Nixon's age, and it was those cherries that are dipped in chocolate and they have a runny filling in them. Mm-hmm. I hate those things. But he bought me those, and he was so cute. I can still see him on the landing of their house giving me this gift, and I thought that was pretty cute that he did that.
Yeah.
But, you know, he always liked me, and, you know, he just, I don't know, he made a lot of crazy choices in his life, which took him on a path that nobody would ever want.
Yeah.
But I think in your dad's family, they have this kind of take a hold and protect no matter what, that kind of a situation.
Did you not feel that in your own family?
Well, I haven't had family do what his family's done.
Well, I know, but
I mean...
He broke the law is what you mean, right?
Yeah, he broke the law.
Yeah, he went to prison for a little while.
Yeah, it was really sad, but he was in hiding. It happened in Arizona, and he was in hiding up here in Utah. And it made me nervous because my kids were little. And I didn't want any kind of trouble coming upon my own children because of what he did.
Yeah.
But, you know, I mean, people make mistakes in their life, and he paid for it, and, you know, it's just what it is. But my kids all loved him, and, I mean, I surely liked him. And it's sad that he passed away.
Yeah, he died young. Died about, what, 52? Late 50s.
I'm not sure how old he was when he died. He's 11 years younger than your dad. And I think he's been gone at least 5 years. Something like that.
Yeah.
And it is sad that he didn't have a more fulfilling life than what he did, but that's alcohol for you. Mm-hmm. That's what happened to him. That's pretty sad. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, Dad, I feel like Dad has a very complicated relationship with all of his siblings at some level. So when I look at his family, I don't know, it's more of a cautionary tale, at least amongst my siblings, how they've behaved over the years and interacted. And
yeah, and you don't know what makes people do what they do. Anyway.
Well, it's kind of interesting because his oldest brother never moved to the United States, never immigrated here.
No, he didn't.
So he's always been away from the family and aloof. And so, you know, my grandparents moved over here. Everyone moved over here. Then Ken was here, the next youngest, for a few years, and then he moved back to England. How long was he here for? Not that long, right? Less than 10?
No, he was here probably longer than that.
Well, this is all when I was a kid.
Well, it was before, I can't remember all the timelines, but he owned a home in Orem that they bought when they first moved here because it was close to where his parents lived.
Yeah.
And then the parents moved to Spanish Fork. And then at some point, Ken and his wife didn't really care for the social life here. They felt there was no social life here like they have in England, because you know how it is. You've lived there. And so they moved to California, and they bought a home down there in Temecula. And they lived down there for quite a few years. And then after that is when he moved back to England. And so he would come here for a couple of months every year for quite a while until COVID. And maybe, I don't think it really had anything to do with his parents passing away, which was a few years ago. His dad would be 100, so they've been gone for about 4 years. So, anyway, not really sure. But they have their own dynamics, but I think they're all very loyal to each other as much as you can be. Because you're right, Keith hasn't lived here. You know, and you see him every other year type thing. In fact, it's one of the reasons why we didn't take our kids over to England when they were younger, is because they were coming here all the time. And so anyway.
Well, yeah. So what was your relationship with your dad like?
I love my dad. My dad was, he loved his kids with all his heart. And he worked hard and provided a nice living for us. And, you know, he loved his grandkids. Do you remember him coming to our house with his pickup truck, and he had all these little junior sleeping bags and camping stuff that he just one day out of the blue, he thought, I'm going to buy this for these kids.
Yeah.
You know, and of course he was a big hunter and ended up going through gunsmith school when he was, I don't know how old he would have been, in his 40s, probably. And that was a big thing with him, taking the grandsons that were old enough to go shooting, which he's done with you. And he used to take me rabbit hunting. I mean, I wasn't shooting, but he made me a really nice gun, really nice rifle. And I don't know, we always went on a family vacation. My dad was big in everything he did. He went all out. He was very outgoing and had a beautiful voice. He was a state athlete in football, basketball, and wrestling. I mean, he was bigger than life.
What character traits do you think that you have of his?
Well, my mom says I'm like my dad. I never knew if that was a compliment or a judgment. But I don't know. I mean, I definitely look like my dad's family. Stuff like that. I don't look like my mom at all.
Yeah.
I don't see anything about me that's like my mom as far as physical features type thing, but I don't know. I see life very black and white. Especially when it comes to my family, my children, other people, if they want to live in the gray, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I can accept people for whoever they are. But I think my dad was opinionated. I think everybody's opinionated. Some people like to act like they're these passive little flowers, and I'm not like that. And I see right through that. But everybody has an opinion. And you ask me a question, and I try not to give you a total straight answer. I try and hit you soft.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
What are the qualities in your dad you admired?
I admired, I always felt safe with my dad. He was like a protector. I always felt that way. And when I got married, I thought, oh, it's a different feeling, you know, and obviously your dad's a protector and that, but you don't know that immediately. I mean, I guess I did know that, but I just remember thinking that of my dad. Always felt safe and secure with him, and he's smart. My dad was really smart. He played football at BYU, but wasn't attending classes, so they wouldn't let him continue. That would have been when he was like an 18-year-old type thing, which is kind of funny with my dad, because I can just see that. He'd be off working a job. He didn't have time to go to class. But later in his life, after he retired from ironworking, he went and took some examination at the state to work for OSHA. And to work for OSHA, my understanding is you have to have a bachelor's degree or more to even qualify. But they let him test, and he got 100 on the thing. So he was an OSHA inspector without a bachelor's degree. And he was fair. You know, I always looked at my dad being very fair, and people in that business where he would have to go out and inspect or go out on an oil field, people generally don't like OSHA coming in. This is my impression. Because OSHA comes in and they nitpick everything that you're doing in your company, and you get these big fines and threats. And if you don't do this by now, this hatchet's going to come down on you. And my dad wasn't like that. And I went to his retirement party that they had for him, and they could do nothing but praise him. And I've had people that I've met that he inspected, and they'll have Mackey come and inspect him because he was fair, because he knew both sides of this coin from being an iron worker all those years. And he's a practical person. He wasn't a wishy-washy type of a person at all. He did good for people. He took care of people. He did a lot of things that you would never know. And every year at Christmas when we lived here, our family would take a Christmas tree, buy a Christmas tree, because it's when you used to really just have fresh Christmas trees back, a lot of them anyway, over to my grandparents' house, and would set up a Christmas tree for him every year. I mean, he was really good that way and thoughtful. And he's given me pieces of jewelry where he'd take me out to lunch and give me a beautiful opal ring or a opal necklace or pearls and stuff like that. But he always made life fun. He was really artistic. He didn't, well, if you saw the gun that my dad made me, you'll see the quality of that work, because he actually made it at gunsmithing school. It's got a story to it. But he took us up to Mill Creek camping for quite a few days, and there was a stream that was going through our area, and he carved out a bridge and a water mill and all these little miniature things he carved out of wood and put across this river. It was the coolest thing. But he's the one who actually got me into doing oil painting when I was 19 years old. And he'd say, I want this or I want that. And I'm like, okay. So I was oil painting elk and deer and all those things were what my dad wanted me to paint. And then, of course, the story of the clown. I did this really cool clown. And, of course, I did this before I was married. And so my dad lived in a split-entry home for 41 years, and he hung that clown at the end of this hall by his gun room. And so he had 8 little grandsons before he got the granddaughters. And I guess that thing scared the death out of the kids. And so now, and then my dad wouldn't let me take it. And I'm like, Dad, it's mine. And he says, no, that's staying in my house, you know, plus the rancher.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so no lie, the day my dad died, my mom says, here, take these paintings. I said, okay. And my nephew was over. And he said, Grandma, I want the clown. I want Grandpa's clown. And she says, well, Diana's got it. And he's like, how come she gets it? And I said, I painted it. It's actually my painting. And he was so bummed that he wasn't going to get to have that painting.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, so just recently it's down in the theater room, and I said to the kids, see these paintings right here? These were your kids. And I said, what do you think of them? And Harper looks at that clown. You know, she goes like this. She says, that's creepy. I thought, I guess nobody's going to want that when I'm gone. But anyway.
So Grandpa died pretty early in life.
He did.
69?
He 68? Was 68.
68. What was it like losing a parent?
It was hard. But I think it's about the last 8 years of his life, he really suffered with diabetes and all the stuff that goes along with diabetes. And where he had an amputation, and he actually had 3 amputations up his leg. It was hard seeing that happen to my dad. Mm-hmm. So when he passed away, it was a relief, because I felt like it was a blessing that he didn't have to suffer anymore. And of course you were there because you had ruptured a disc in your back and had come home from your mission for back surgery. So you were with me that day that my dad passed away and we went up to his house.
Yeah.
But he's missed a lot.
He's missed a lot.
Yeah.
How do you think your life would have been different if he would have lived for another 20 years?
Well, with the health issues he had, he obviously couldn't have lived.
We'll say he's
but if he didn't have those health issues, I know my mom's life would have been a lot easier, because she's been a widow for 21 years now, and it's hard. But you know, they had just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary, and he passed away just 2 or 3 months later.
Yeah.
So, but he would have loved all these little great grandkids. He would have taught them all of his funny little tricks he used to do with them. But anyway, he had a great sense of humor.
Yeah, he did. He was really fun. He was a really, really fun grandpa. He used to let us drive his truck. We used to interact with him quite a bit. He used to talk to us a lot. We'd watch Predator with him. Rambo with him. I'm trying to think of all the other shows we shouldn't have been watching, but watched with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was.
And played Kings in the Corner, and what other card games he loved to play with you kids.
Skip-Bo. He loved Skip-Bo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he would cheat to win.
Well, did he?
Oh, yeah. He was a cheater. Yeah.
So when Grandma was on the podcast, obviously she talked about some of the struggles between those two in their married life. Did you feel those when you were a kid?
Probably not to that degree until I was actually married.
What do you mean?
Well, my parents, like the stuff that my mom talked about, I didn't really know about that growing up.
You didn't?
No.
Did they seem happy?
Yeah. Every time my dad came home from work, and he came right on the dot, and we had dinner on the table type thing with my dad. Because, he put in a hard, long, many hours of being an iron worker, which is hard work. Mm-hmm. But he would always give my mom a kiss. First thing he did when he walked into the kitchen was give my mom a kiss.
Yeah.
And, he was... In fact, my mom's birthday's in April. He died in September. And he had me pick him up and take him out to buy her a gift and a card for her birthday. I remember doing that with him because he obviously couldn't drive or anything at that point. And that was actually really hard for him to even get up and get in my car and do that.
Yeah.
And he actually came down to our house in Hidden Oaks. And, of course, he's in a wheelchair, and you had to go up steps to get into my house. Not many as now. But we rolled him around to the backyard so he could visit you.
Yeah.
So.
How's the relationship with Grandma and him now? I think that affects you at all?
It doesn't. And it doesn't change how I feel about my dad.
Does it put a wedge between you and your mom?
No. Not at all.
Is it hard having a parent who doesn't like the other one?
I don't think that my mom disliked my dad. I never saw that. She was always a good wife and mother and was always supportive of my dad. I've seen a lifetime of kindnesses that she gave to my dad. But I think as you get older, and my mom will be 90 here in April. I think as you get to be that age and, you start slipping a little bit, I think that stuff like that comes to the forefront. An example of that is your other grandmother, who was, 95 when she died? For the last, I've known her for 50 years, so I've been around a long time with them. She was really focused on her dad, and everything was about her dad, and her dad was bigger than life, because she was a month away from being a 10-year-old when her dad died suddenly. And it was, you can see as an older woman how traumatic that experience was for her. And I think that with my mom, it's very similar. The last 8 years of my dad's life, where she was his caregiver, was really hard. Mm-hmm. And, she felt she was alone in it. And she was 20 years younger than what I am right now when she was going through that with him. Well, that's not right. She was my age when she was going through all that. And physically and emotionally, that was really hard. And to have her husband and her mother die within days of each other. So she had a mother who was in a care center who she was totally devoted to my grandma. It was a real shock to her. And it was like, what's happened? You never think that's going to happen because you never know when it's going to happen. So it was really hard on my mom. And then all these years, I've got my sister and, who lives with my mom and the stuff she's gone through. Things would have been different if my dad had been there.
Yeah.
And so it's been tough for my mom. So no, I'm people make mistakes. People do things they shouldn't do. But they do plenty of things for the good. And it does not affect my relationship with either one of them.
Right. Well, it doesn't affect it negatively, is that what you mean?
It's not. It's not affected negatively. my siblings feel the same way because we've obviously talked about your podcast.
Right. Well, didn't you all know before anyways?
Yeah, everybody knew.
Was it some shocking revelation?
No.
So, I mean, Grandpa was an interesting man. I mean, I loved him as well, but he talked about, the LDS church a ton, but never attended. So there was a lot of stuff in his life that was kind of like that. And so, as you're being, speaking from my perspective, as you are being influenced by these people who love you and you love them and you respect them, you get to see good and bad with everybody. I
you do.
A lot of people like to, forget all the bad parts. And the thing with Grandma that's interesting, that's all she really remembers.
Yeah, I mean, her and I've talked about it, and she'll talk about it with me, but she didn't feel like she could ever talk about that. Mm-hmm. And she never really talked about it with him. Mm-hmm. And I think that was hard too. So her feelings and what it actually did to her were never expressed. And, that's hard.
What do you think the lesson is in that?
I think the lesson is that you have to learn how to forgive. And
no matter what?
Forgiving, yeah, I think no matter what, you have to forgive. And I think that if you haven't walked in somebody else's shoe, no matter what it is, that you shouldn't be so hard on everybody. When it affects you personally, it's a different story.
Why?
Because you feel the hurt. You have to deal with it. You have to adapt. You have to make changes and stuff like that. But I don't care who you are. You're not perfect.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I mean, I think whether you're personally affected by it or not, I mean, doesn't everyone deserve forgiveness?
Yeah, I think they do.
Yeah.
And, there's some people that have a huge burden where they have to forgive people. And some people, for instance, if one of their loved ones has been killed by somebody else, some people know, some people are able to forgive that and truly forgive it, even though they're dealing with the loss of somebody that they love and how that changes the dynamics of your family. Mm-hmm. There's other people who'll never forgive that. They don't understand the burden that would be lifted off of them if they could forgive. It's not that you have to forget it, because you don't forget it, but you're definitely better off if you can learn how to forgive.
Yeah, I would agree. I think not forgiving people is just hurting you.
It does. Right? It doesn't hurt them.
It stills your joy.
Yeah.
So, Mom, what would you say the purpose of life is?
Well, I think the purpose of life is to have a companion and a family. And, of course, my religious beliefs are foremost in my mind.
Which are?
Which are LDS.
Oh, for people who don't know what that means, what are your beliefs?
Well, I think being married in the temple, honoring your covenants. The key thing is to follow the Savior. And if you look at people in the world, there are so many good people in this world. There's so many good people who love the Savior. I think that's a key thing, to follow the Savior.
Following the Savior, what do you think what do you say the top 3 things are to follow the Savior?
Well, I think the number one thing, other than the grand thing of him being the Savior of all of our souls, I think following his teachings, follow his example, learn from him, become like him.
To get specific though, what have you learned from the Savior, in your own life? What's some lessons that you've been able to implement?
I think a big one's love. I think this, I mean, we can say the big thing like the world, and obviously it's the world, but even in our community, if people learn to show kindness and love, that's what he was all about. And he was an example.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting. I've talked to a lot of Christian people throughout my life, right? All different sects of religion. And not a lot of them can define it very well. A lot of people will just say, oh, atonement. But there's not really a definition for that. Like, what does that really mean?
Well, I don't really think, at least for me personally, I can understand the concepts of the atonement that I've been taught in the LDS church. What I've read in the scriptures, I can understand all that, but really the magnitude of it, the godly magnitude of it, I don't know that I can really even totally comprehend that. But I believe in it. I have faith in it. I know it's real. I know that he is the Savior of this world, no doubt. I know that we are imperfect people living here, and that's part of what the veil was all about. That you come down here and you make choices. You have your freedom to choose what you want to choose. And, we're all at a different level of understanding. And then you have trials in your life that come your way, or an article or a friend or something that's made you think differently of what you've learned. And I've just had too many witnesses in my life of who he is.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the country getting more atheist?
I think it's really sad.
Why do you think they're becoming more atheist?
Because they're not honoring covenants. They're not God-fearing people, which I think you need to be. I think it's that they don't have an understanding. And I really don't know that they're... I don't know. My mind is that there is a life after death. There is a purpose in this life, and it's a test to fit into where you're going to fit into the next life, which is going to be perfected in our Savior. But I think that there's, for instance, we have a sister-in-law right now who lives in England, and she's got cancer, and they can't do any more for her. She doesn't believe there's anything when she dies. Her parents have passed away many years ago. Her only sister-in-law she has one brother, and his wife has passed away. But when we were over there on a vacation with our friend's wife asked her some religious type question. I can't even tell you exactly what it was. And she just said, I don't have any belief of any of that. And that really surprised me, because I have joy in knowing that this isn't the end when you leave here, that there's loved ones waiting for you, and peace and, goodness type thing. She doesn't believe in any of that. And I think that is sad to me, that you don't have any kind of belief in that.
Why is it sad?
Because I do have it, and I find joy in it. And you can know that.
You think she had joy in her life, though, right?
What's that?
Think she had joy in her life?
Yes. She's got 2 daughters, and one of them has 2 sons, and she's a very happy person.
Yeah.
She's lived a good life. She's not LDS, and She had good parents that she loved, and she was really close to her brother.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? Because Western culture is just moving away from Christianity. And so, you've been on this earth for 69 years now. I guess my real question is not in religion specifically, but why do you think we're moving away from that? I mean, is it technology? Is it too much information? Is it terrible leadership inside the religions? Why do you think that people are leaving in droves?
I don't know. I wouldn't judge somebody else's religion.
That's what I mean. No religion, just people in general. People are literally clicking the box. I don't believe this anymore.
Well, I think a lot of it is because they don't attend church, whatever church they belong to. They don't feel that spirit of goodness that we're actually all born with. The light of the Savior. You look at a child. Children are very receptive and they're happy and, for the most part. But I think people have stopped going to church. They've stopped reading the scriptures. They've stopped possibly serving other people.
Why do you think they've stopped going to church specifically?
I really don't know why they stop, because there's so much to be gained from going to church. You can hear truths at church and during general conference, which is open to the world. Anybody can watch that. Those things inspire you. They lift you. And I think that when you're spiritually lifted, you're a better person because you're living more like the Savior. People who are becoming atheists are forgetting who he is. Instead of celebrating his birthday in 3 days, it's all about the commercial aspect of Christmas. I think, for instance, Easter is to me a very sacred. The birthday to me, Christmas is fun, and it's always been that way. Maybe that's how I'm raised. I don't know. Yeah. But I look at Easter as a very sacred type of a holiday that we celebrate.
Well, that can make sense because Christmas actually isn't his birthday, nor was Christmas ever set up to be.
No,
it's kind of hijacked by Christians.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
I could see that way. Most people in this world don't.
But having an Easter bunny that you take your kids to sit on his knee, I'm like, that's ridiculous. Because I'm black and white.
You also have Santa for Christmas, though.
That's right. But to me, Santa, that whole thing's, it's about giving gifts and learning the meaning of what the different things in Christmas are, which you've been taught in your life. But
I think Christmas is more about family time, taking a break, ending the year.
Yeah.
Traditions and keeping the family unit together. I think that's much more the spirit of Christmas than...
Oh, I think that's really... And we're lucky that our family does that.
I think a lot of families do that.
Because there's plenty of people who are alone. I don't know why they don't have family, because family's big to us. Yeah. We've always had family, and we love them all.
Yeah.
No matter what they bring, they all bring good things.
Yeah.
That make us happy. But I also think it's extremely important that you read out of the scriptures why we celebrate Christmas, why we celebrate the birth of the Savior. Why is that important in people's lives?
Well, I guess that's what I mean, Mom, is celebrating Christmas has nothing to do with the scriptures.
No.
Because his birthday wasn't around Christmas.
Right.
So I understand what you mean, but yeah, I think if you believe in Christ, then yeah, you should understand him, and which I've always found interesting, right? I feel like a lot of religious people study, build their whole lives around that belief, but then when you talk to them about it, they say then they don't know anything. They can never understand everything. It's this greater, massive thing that they just can't get. Well,
I think there's a lot of confusion that's been put out there in the world by different people with their own interpretations of what scriptures are. Look how many scriptures there are.
There's also some corruption. When you say, I think in the Western world, talking to the United States specifically, kind of talking about why people are moving away from organized religion, is you see the vast amounts of money in it. right? Look at Joel Osteen. Joel Osteen does a television show. He's worth $100 million. Massive mega churches are built up, and it's all for money.
Well, you see a lot of that in Texas. Their churches are huge.
Literally all over the place, yeah.
Are they? I just noticed them when we were in Texas. That's a church? Oh, my gosh, it's huge.
But a lot of the more established churches do as well, right? I mean, the LDS Church has temples. You know, there's a lot of money in temples.
A lot of money, but that's the greatest place you can be is in an LDS temple. And I'm lucky enough that I serve in the temple.
Yeah. Why is it the greatest place you can be?
Because of the blessings that you receive from the temple. Mm-hmm. The sealing power to your family.
You just mean the covenants that come out of it, or do you mean like when you go, you receive blessings?
Oh, I receive blessings by going to the temple.
Yeah. What are some of
That's
the best?
a big deal.
What's some of the best blessings you've got from going to the temple?
Well, just generally, the testimony that I have, for one thing, is extremely valuable. And, with I don't know, I've always gone to the temple. We just celebrated 47 years of being married, and I have always attended the temple.
Yeah.
But for many years now, I've served in the temple, and that's even on a different level.
Yeah.
So
if you were to give someone advice about going to the temple, like what's the best advice you can give them? Like what kind of blessings should people expect?
I think that, I don't know what would be the best advice I could give somebody, but I would say to honor your covenants and to attend regularly. I think there's a lot of members of the church that are leaving the church are people who are not honoring their covenants. They're not attending the temple for whatever reason. And I think at different stages of your life, it can be harder. When you've got little children, when maybe if you're in college, I don't know. You can always find a reason not to go, but I'm at a place in my life where I can go anytime I want.
Yeah.
And there's no reason not to. And I think there's great blessings in doing work for your ancestors.
Yeah.
I think it's extremely important and valuable. But you can't explain that to somebody unless they're doing it. It's like talking to a wall because they have no idea the peace and the lift that you get from attending the temple, whether as a patron or like the opportunity that I have.
So is it hard for you to know people who are devout LDS people that know all the covenants and know all the stuff that goes on in there and then choose to trash that?
It's hard with my kids. But as far as other people, I just don't look at it that way.
Why is it hard with your kids?
Because I know what they should be doing.
What's that?
Honoring their covenants.
Which covenant specifically?
Your baptismal, for one.
Yeah.
And then the other covenants you make are in the temple. And you can't even remember what they are if you're not attending the temple. You're not renewing. You're not being touched by the Spirit to know how important they are.
Do you think being touched by the Spirit comes through obedience?
I don't know. I don't know that I've ever thought of it that way. I think that if you seek to know the truth about the Savior and you seek to know the truth about different things, I think it depends on what your mindset is and what your heart is. But I also know that the Savior didn't just die for me and my family. It was for the world. And that's for every person that you see on the news that's corrupt. Everyone is loved by our Father in heaven.
Yeah.
But
I
the
guess
final,
what I'm asking though, Mom, is like, when you say if people aren't honoring their covenants, that's an obedience thing. Going to church is an obedience thing. Going to the temple is an obedience thing. And if you're not being obedient to all those principles, right, then you can't feel the Spirit. So do you have to be obedient to feel the Spirit?
I don't think that. Because there's most of the world who don't go to the temple, whether they're LDS or whether they're not.
Yeah, but
I think that every individual can feel the Spirit. But I think the Spirit comes out of goodness. Mm-hmm. It doesn't come out of hate.
Right.
It doesn't come out of lying or deceit.
Do you think it comes out of necessity?
I do think it's a necessity.
No, does it come from necessity? So, for example, God's up in heaven, right? Trying to guide all of his children down here. Would he use his Spirit to influence the Pope or a Muslim leader and
you bet
grab 90% of the population? Because that's a better route to take to hit more people, right?
Well, I obviously know a lot of people who are not LDS, and they're the salt of the earth. They're good people. They love the Lord. There's so much good in this world, but basically what you see on the news and when people are on a rage on Facebook or whatever they're on, that isn't coming out of good. None of that's coming out of good. No, but this world is full of good people. And if people have left the church, they're on a path that I fully believe the Lord is fully aware. I don't think he leaves you alone, doesn't care. I don't think that's how it works. In fact, I know it doesn't work that way. Mm. You know, the atonement is, like I say, it's way bigger than I can really comprehend. But
I don't know if that's true. Why is it bigger than you can comprehend? I mean, isn't the basics that
No,
Christ
I don't think it's basic. I think that...
No, the basics of it are that Christ died for everyone's sin. He acts as a mediator with Heavenly Father to fulfill mercy and justice at the same time.
That's right.
I mean, what more is there?
I just think it's massive. I think it's way bigger than any of us even really realize.
What do you mean by big? What would be bigger?
What's bigger is what he actually did. And what it actually means and the magnitude, why he was selected, who he actually is as a person. I just think it's bigger because there's a veil.
Yeah, I guess when I hear, atonement's one of the things that me personally, I've always had a problem with the way people describe it because it is very simple. But then it goes into this magnitude side where it's just like, so big and no one can comprehend it. And I've always wondered why. I don't understand why religious teachers or religious leaders don't explain the atonement well. Feels like that would be a basic thing that everyone inside of a certain religion, Baptist, Methodist, whatever, LDS, that they would understand, like, this is what the atonement looks like, this is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that you get different opinions. For instance, if you have a Sunday school teacher, you bring your personality into the lesson that you're teaching. And you may have a different take on something which gets thrown out there. I don't think it's the leaders of the church. I mean, it is what it is.
So let me ask you, when your oldest child left the church, how did that change our relationship?
I don't know that it changed our relationship. Do you think it has?
Massively.
Wow.
You don't think it's changed our relationship at all? I think it kind of changed the dynamic of the family. Because you're kind of sitting, I know you and Dad are devout, and I admire that in you guys. But your kids are all, it's a mixed, belief family.
Well, I personally feel that everybody has a journey to go on.
Yeah.
I know I've had mine. I've had things in my life, but I've depended on the church. I've depended on, not the church, but I've depended on the Savior. Mm-hmm. And that's where I put my faith and my belief.
Did you ever waver on it?
Never.
Why not?
I don't know. I've thought about that. I'm thinking, what is it about me? I just never have.
Have you ever questioned
And maybe
it?
that's who I was before I came here. Who knows?
Maybe.
No. Excuse me. I've never questioned the church. I've never questioned the doctrine of the church. I've never
So some people
talked bad about the prophet. I respect the bishops that I've had over the years, and I've seen many personalities. I've seen many people. I actually don't look at them as imperfect people, but we all are imperfect people, so we know that as a baseline. Mm-hmm. But I've seen them in their calling with the mantle of a bishop. I've seen them rise up and become good leaders of their ward, which usually lasted about 5 years.
Yeah.
I've seen many of that. I've never disliked a bishop. I've never disliked the poor sister that was the Relief Society president or her counselors. I don't look at people that way. I don't try and find, geez, what are you doing in that? Well, there is one person, but I'm not going to say who it was. She was way out there.
Fair enough.
But she was okay. I shouldn't have said that. I'm not going to mention her name.
Don't say her name.
No, I will not mention her name.
No, I understand what you mean.
She is a lovely person, and she's so happy when she sees me. But
yeah.
She used to say some really crazy things.
Well, yeah, but I think so. The LDS religion, the one we're talking about most, is very interesting in the fact that it used to be the fastest growing religion in the world, right?
I really don't know what the stats are, but we've got thousands of missionaries out there, and you were one of them. So, you know,
there's a lot of missionaries. I mean,
what the work is.
I think there was 80,000 when I was out. 80,000 missionaries throughout the entire world.
Yeah, I don't know.
Supposed to be in. But as you look at the church over your last, 69 years, how have you seen it evolve?
Well, obviously there's more temples. I remember at one time thinking, someday I would love to go in every temple. Well, that'll never happen because I've been to temples all over the world, but there's no way I would ever get to go to every temple.
Yeah.
I don't see a big change. I just don't see that the way that you see it.
How do I see it?
I think you see that there's been a lot of change that's happened. I mean, you look at the restoration of the gospel, and when you think of all those people, they were not raised LDS. They were not raised with the teachings that you and I were raised with. They were all those people out of Scotland that you taught on your mission, coming in and starting a church. And everybody has an opinion, and everybody is just a normal human being who doesn't like how this sister does something or how this brother did something. I mean, I try and put that in perspective of what it would have been like.
I guess when I mean the changes, I don't mean like as in doctrinal changes. I mean like in societal changes. I mean, you went through the 70s where blacks were allowed the priesthood, which is a major change. You've gone through the temple building of the 80s and 90s. You've looked at a younger generation fall away from the church completely. It's not growing like it used to grow. I mean, there's been a lot of changes over the last really 20, 30 years.
Well, for all of that kind of stuff, yeah, I see all that. And that's all been prophesied, and it's all happening.
Like from the scriptures prophesied?
Yes.
Yeah. Does that make you think it's almost over? Because a lot of those
I don't know. I mean,
doomsday.
nobody knows the day or time when that's going to happen, but it's going to be from what you read in the scriptures, it's going to be the great and dreadful day.
Yeah.
And but to get rid of all of the sin and turmoil that's going on in our world these days, and the wars and the destruction of countries and all that stuff, I think it's horrible. And I think it'd be nice when there isn't any of that anymore. Yeah. And I think that day will come. But, you know, probably there's plenty of people who don't believe that or had never even thought of that. But that's what I think. Yeah. But whether it's soon, I have no idea. I remember as a teenager being told, yeah, in the next 15 years, it's going to be the second coming of the Lord. And I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that's where people get a little religiously zealot.
They say crazy things. That isn't coming off of the pulpit. That's people interpreting their own whatever, fear or whatever. I don't know what they're doing. But I don't look at it that way. I don't think of the end of life. I think of the end of my life. But I don't look at life that way. But you know, when my grandmother died, which would have been in 1971, and she was in her 70s, Harold B. Lee spoke at my grandmother's funeral. So when I look at younger years of my life, I wasn't far removed from some of the leaders of the church. Being N. Eldon Tanner's brother, Roy, is actually my great uncle. Mm-hmm. And so when my grandparents died, my Uncle Roy came down from Canada, and my grandparents' viewing, it was at both of their viewings, I can think of them both, they were full of all these general authorities that are there. But I don't feel close to them now because I'm not physically going to General Conference. I watch it on TV. I've gone there physically, but I used to go all the time. You didn't have to have a ticket. You know, I worked at the church office building for 5 years.
Right.
And when it was General Conference, we could either sit in our office and crochet or walk through the tunnels underneath from the church office building over to the Temple Square. Yeah. And we could sit and watch conference. We could sit any place we wanted. I mean, life was just different then.
Yeah.
You know, I've stood as close as that to President David O. McKay at a parade. Jeff and I were there, and we were teenagers, and our moms had taken us up to, I don't know what parade it was, but we were right up there by the temple, where Hotel Utah, which is now Joseph Fielding Smith Building, and the temple right there in the center of the road is where this parade started. And anyway, him and I were goofing around doing whatever, and somebody was wheeling President David O. McKay down because he lived in the penthouse of the Hotel Utah. And they wheeled him right there, and we just stood right there where the prophet was. He wasn't like swarmed with people. There were maybe a handful of people, and he glowed. He actually glowed. And I've thought about that all these years. And I mean, he literally had an aura about him. It was like, wow, because I've never seen that before. And so not long ago, within the last few months, Jeff was talking to me because he reminisces a lot about, do you remember this? Do you remember this? As we were growing up. And he said, do you remember when we met President David O. McKay? And I said, yeah, I do. And he goes, do you remember how he glowed? And I said, that is funny that you would remember that. Because I didn't want to ask him that to put that into his head. But he actually said that. We both witnessed that. You know, and I went to his viewing when he died, and being the line clear around the temple block to go in and walk through his viewing and stuff. But, you know, I've just seen so much in my life that, you know, I guess it's made me who I am.
Yeah. So we got 8 grandkids almost, 7.5. Yeah. What advice would you give them? They're all young and impressionable. What would be your best advice if this is the last thing they heard?
I think that they just to stay who they are. They're good people. They're all good-hearted people, and I obviously would want them to all follow the Savior.
Yeah. Anything else?
Just to love each other.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they can do that. So far, so good. 13 years of the grandkids getting along.
Oh, they're cute. They're cute little people.
Yeah.
Of course, Brea's getting bigger. That girl's shooting up.
She is. What's the next 10 years of your life like, Mom? What do you want to do?
Travel. I would love to travel.
Where do you want to go?
Well, I'd like to go to the Baltic on a cruise. I'd like to go maybe up to Maine. I'd love to do that railroad trip in Canada. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah.
But I like to go on cruises. I don't like to be scared. I wouldn't jump off a cliff. You couldn't pay me enough to do that.
Yeah.
I'd have to be so drugged that I didn't know what was happening. Because I have a horrible fear of heights, so there's not a chance.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even watch it. I couldn't have been standing there watching you do that. I saw it on the video, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
It was wild.
What's happened to my kid? But
So what do you think about the men's group I'm in?
I don't know. You go on some amazing trips. I had to join it so I can go on these amazing trips with you. Do you think they'd like a mom? Chaperone? Nobody would want me to be their chaperone. But I don't know. It seems like you've met some real interesting people. And I don't know. What do you think about it?
I like it a lot. It's a good container for personal growth and development and becoming friends with like-minded people and enhancing your life. You know, it's a good part about community. You know, you're getting with people that have the same shared beliefs as you, same goals, you know, a place where you can be vulnerable and have trust with people and rely on other people to do things for you, you know, outside of being told to do or.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Well, it seems like some of the stories you've told me that people have risen up to be higher, better than what they were.
Yeah.
They kind of see a different outlook on life and that there's a better, bigger purpose.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. You seem to have some nice friends. You've always had good friends.
Yeah. Got really good friends in there.
Yeah.
So you want to travel? What else you want to do? Anything else you want to accomplish?
Just spend time with my family. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Have a happy life.
We're good.
That's what's important.
Well, we're coming up on our hard stop, Mom, so I need your best 2 minutes of advice to me.
Just keep being who you are. You're a good father. You're a good husband. And you're a good son. And I think that people who are now working for you, that we've sold you the company, I think that they respect you. I think all the people whose lives you touch down at UVU with the culinary school, all of that, you just give your all. And that's something I've always admired about you. No matter what you were doing, from a little Cub Scout to a 41-year-old that is making his way in life. And I think it's amazing how you always have time for your kids. You don't always answer your mom's calls. I'll just put that out there. But Nixon comes out the other morning. Yeah, I've been talking to my dad. I says, oh, we were on the phone for about a half an hour, and he was telling me all about that football game with the Raiders. And this guy, and he was going on telling me all this story. And I thought that's really cool that you've got that little bond going with him for a specific thing that you have a passion for and had as growing up. And then Brea, I says, can you track your dad? Because I'll put it out there, my son doesn't want me tracking him. So has our relationship changed? Yeah, I used to be the most important thing in his life, but that's not there anymore. And she goes, yeah, I can track my dad. And he's in Salt Lake. And I'm like, because Nixon had just told me he'd talked to you for half an hour, which I assumed was in Vegas. So anyway, and, she's always texting you and asking your advice and stuff like that. And I just think that's charming.
Yeah. I
think it's really cool that you're always available for your kids, no matter what you're doing.
I try to be, for sure.
Yeah. And you do this one-on-one time with them. I think it's really cool. Yeah. So I think you're an amazing person. I'm glad you're my son. And I'm crazy about you. I'm one of your biggest fans, if not the biggest. Well, I can't be the biggest because you got those cute kids. But you got a good heart.
Oh, thank you, Mom. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. You excited to come on? Are you nervous? A little nervous?
I was kind of nervous, but I never knew if I was going to be roasted for taking you. How soon before Christmas did I haul you 3 boys up to get your wisdom teeth pulled out? You couldn't even eat mashed potatoes on Christmas Day. It was crazy.
Yeah, my mom surprised us when we were in high school with, hey, we're going to Lagoon today, but we actually ended up going, that's good.
It was in December, guys, so he's fibbing.
We got surprised with hey, you're getting your wisdom teeth pulled out today. I was like, today? And we just went and did it.
Yeah. Well, I thought I was really going to get some slack from...
From me?
No.
Oh, Brett. Yeah, she's pointing down.
He was the only one that wasn't giving me a hard time.
Well, I'm the only one that didn't get any gas, so I had those things pulled out with just being numbed, if you remember right.
All of you did. And that's because that's how I had my wisdom teeth pulled out. I didn't know. I've never had gas given to me at the dentist.
The other 2 had gas.
I don't think so.
Ooh, we'll have to fact check this.
Yeah, all I know is that I had to. You're all in a different room at Steve's office, and I go to buy your Lord Tab, and I've got 3 prescriptions for Lord Tab, and how come you've got? I mean, he's like questioning me, like I'm trying to steal Lord Tab. Yeah. I said my kids just had their wisdom teeth pulled out. Oh, I don't even think you guys could hardly swallow a pill. Your mouths were so swollen.
We couldn't. That was.
But you couldn't play contact sport for 6 months after you had your wisdom teeth pulled out. That's why I did it when I did. Yeah. Because you were all into football.
Quite frankly, I was happy you did it. I was wrestling, and I hated wrestling. So.
Did you? Yeah. Anyway, but that's why I did that. But yeah, I've probably done a few crazy things in my life with my kids, but anyway, you were blessed to have me as your mom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming on, Mom.
Thank you.
I love you.
I love you too.
Thanks for listening to the President McCormack Podcast, brought to you by McCormack Foundation, Saxton Fund, ADP Lemco, and Professional Floor Systems. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and keep up with Mark on Instagram @President McCormack.